And at 10, Future Flash. The Future Flash is certainly a powerful version of Barry, but he's not really from another reality, but from an alternate future that he wants to prevent from happening, hence why he's at number 10. The Future Flash is a version of Barry Allen from the future who blamed himself for the death of Wally West. So in an effort to correct that mistake, he tries to prevent this tragedy by killing people. Yeah, he starts killing his enemies to gain enough speed to travel back in time. He starts by killing Gorilla Grodd with like a little microbomb that he phases into his head, and then eventually he kills enough people that he can travel back in time to kill one final person, himself. His goal this whole time was to travel back to before Wally dies and kill his old self, preventing any of this from happening. At least that's what he thinks is gonna happen, which is honestly a pretty awful plan if you ask me. But based on how he killed his entire rogues gallery, essentially in order to gain enough speed to travel back in time, makes him seem pretty damn powerful, and honestly, really scary. Like, if you're willing to kill another version of your past self or whatever it is, okay, you need some therapy or something. I mean, it still sounds like a paradox to me, like I don't think you could actually kill yourself, but hey.
Number 9. Killing Eobard Thawne. This is sort of a weird one, as although everyone seemed to feel that Barry Allen here was a villain, he was also just attempting to defend himself from a future that had come true before, and almost completely broken him. Barry Allen killed Eobard Thawne after Thawne made an appearance on his wedding day. Barry wasn't marrying Iris here, in fact Iris was no longer around, because before Thawne had actually killed her. Instead, he was marrying his current love, Fiona Webb, whom Thawne, when he showed up on their wedding day, attempted to kill. Fearing that Thawne would once again kill his romantic partner and still traumatized from when he'd likely killed Iris, Barry Allen killed Thawne before he could harm Fiona. However, because Thawne was killed by Barry, Barry ended up on trial, with even his nephew Wally West testifying against him, claiming that Barry had used basically an unwarranted amount of speed and force to stop Thawne. Speed force, you might say. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more cool Flash lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up.
And at 8, Mercury Flash. Mercury Flash is a robotic version of the Flash made by Dr. Tornado as a member of his Metal League. The robot uses a mercury-based physiology, whatever that means, that makes it able to somehow channel the Speed Force. I don't understand how this man not only learned about the Speed Force but was able to replicate or siphon it using mercury or whatever, but who cares? It's comics. It doesn't need to make sense as long as it advances the plot. First being introduced in the Multiversity Guidebook #1 in March 2015, this version of the Flash can do everything the normal Flash can do powers-wise. Because, you know, he's a robot, he can't really do, human-like activities. And has the added advantage of, you know, being a robot, so he doesn't really fear death. Not only is it not coded into him, but he also is just straight up being able, you can repair him. This version of the Flash hails from Earth 44, and honestly I kinda wish I was him. No responsibilities, only running super fast. That's the dream. And at 7, Black Flash. The actual physical representation of death for all speedsters, and honestly maybe a couple other people, but they just don't see him coming. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper of the Speed Force. Making his first appearance in The Flash Volume 2 number 138 in 1998, he was seen before the deaths of several speedsters including Barry Allen, Johnny Quick, and Bart Allen. He also tried to return Wally West to the Speed Force but was unsuccessful, taking Wally's girlfriend Linda Park instead. I mean, like, based on past experiences, Wally, feel like he did you a favor. But since he was unsuccessful the first time, Black Flash returned to try to take Wally again, freezing time for everyone who didn't have a connection to the Speed Force, which is a total dick move. Like, first you take my girl, and now you're still trying to get me? Like, bro, at least give me my girl back. But thanks to the combined efforts of multiple speedsters, including Jay Garrick, Max Mercury, and Jesse Quick, Wally was actually able to race Black Flash to the end of time, causing death to apparently have no meaning, which I mean doesn't really make total sense because as long as someone is still living, death would still matter, but oh well. It's comics, like I said. But that didn't stop the Speed Force, because later Barry Allen returned in the Flash Rebirth storyline, becoming the new Black Flash. Until Professor Zoom took over the title after, you know, he was raised in the Blackest Night storyline. Yeah, there's been a lot of Black Flashes. And at 6, Darkseid War. What's more powerful than a speedster death? What about actual death as a speedster? That's right, in the Darkseid War storyline, Barry Allen becomes the host for Death, also known as the Black Racer. Through Barry, Black Racer kills Darkseid and Barry fights off Black Racer, escaping from his grasp. Barry runs away, but the Racer gives chase, staying mere inches behind him. When Black Racer catches up to Barry, he explains that he must have a tether. If he doesn't, the entire world will end and everybody will die. He shows this world to Barry, and Barry accepts the power. He has to kill someone though to let the universe continue to live. So then he appears in front of Iris. As he does, the Black Racer bursts out and tries to kill her, but Barry once again frees himself from the manifestation of death, but this time using his own weapon to kill him. Killing Black Racer seemed to be the answer, but instead, Barry Allen had freed Death. And since it no longer had a tether, it wiped everyone out. Yeah, Death isn't as cool and collected as the one from Supernatural. But luckily this was all happening inside of Barry's head. So when he comes to, he accepts the responsibility of Death and becomes in essence just the Grim Reaper, the last thing that anyone sees before they die. And honestly, that's pretty damn powerful if you ask me. And also, kind of my dream job. Halfway through into number 5, Savitar. As a fan of the Arrowverse, I feel like I need to include one of the most interesting evil speedsters in the show. Savitar, while sharing a name with another evil speedster from the comics, is actually revealed to be a time remnant of Barry Allen in the show. Being more of a future Flash than Savitar, I mean he's kind of both. It's weird. He also didn't come back to kill Barry, he came back to kill Iris. His story is pretty messed up. In essence, making himself and having like a classic chicken and the egg scenario. Which came first, Savitar or the Time Remnant? Neither, they both kind of made each other. In the post-Flashpoint Arrowverse timeline, Savitar comes back from the future after escaping a Speed Force prison to kill Iris West before her and Barry can get married. This causes Barry to create as many Time Remnants as he possibly can because he is willing to kill himself in order to save Iris. Yeah, the Savitar kills them all because he's a future version of Barry. He knows what's gonna happen. Except he spares one. The one he spares is gonna become Savitar because he gets shunned by the rest of the team for not being the real Barry Allen, even though he is still the real Barry Allen. Whatever. So in an act of fury and rage, the Time Remnant runs back in time, creating a new identity for himself as the first speedster and the god of speed, known as Savitar. But the suit he wears also allows him to travel at basically instantaneous speeds, and it's also existent and non-existent at the same time. And the show version of the Flash has not been able to do that at this point. He's not been able to travel basically instantaneously, even in recent seasons. And he's only visible to other speedsters. Normal people can't see him, at least while he's trapped inside the Speed Force prison. I don't think they really went over that afterwards, after he got out. But hey, whatever. And at 4, Speed Demon. Recently I wrote a list about the Amalgam universe that combined DC and Marvel characters, and the Speed Demon comes from this universe. A combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Barry Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. The demon component of Etrigan was also formerly Jay Garrick, because Night Spectre stole Jay's soul, which is kind of rude because that's my thing. Anyway, the Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his attempts to collect the souls of pure and the most corrupt, and I mean also again that sounds like a pretty sweet deal, but Blaze Allen refused. So in an attempt to persuade him, I guess in a way persuade him, at his wedding night, Night Spectre stole Iris's soul, and then he asked Blaze to do it, and then he did because he wanted to get his girl back, or at least make sure that she wasn't going to be killed or something. But I mean yeah, that's not how that works. Speed Demon also speaks only in rhymes, and whenever I do that people get mad at me, but I don't care. This is a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe fire. So yeah, Wally West, which is an amalgam of Wally West and Danny Ketch, was also the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back. But I mean come on, a fire-breathing, speeding ball of fire and lightning? That sounds incredibly badass. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Godspeed. August Hart is the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash. While going after a criminal organization known as Black Hole, August was struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. So, after this, August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got his revenge on the one who he suspected to be his brother's killer. He had given up on the justice system since his brother's killer had gone free, and with his newfound power, had the ability to become judge, jury, and executioner. August realized after he had gotten his powers that he also had the ability to steal other speedsters' speed, though for a time could only do it by killing them. He practiced this skill enough to be able to do it non-lethally, but like, you know, he still was killing people. So with his new godlike speed, August was able to move so fast that he could create duplicates of himself at any given time, allowing him to give the illusion that he and Godspeed were two different people, which is pretty damn sick, considering the alternatives are Speed Mirage and Time Remnant, which aren't really the same thing. And I mean, the CW show also did kind of adapt this with all the Godspeed clones during the Godspeed War storyline, which I mean they should have went into more, but oh well.
Number 2 becomes Famine. During the events of DC's Future State, we learned exactly what the future holds for Wally. And yeah, it's not good. While we might be enjoying the Flash series now, where Wally is back and most certainly not a villain, it turns out that his destiny is once again to become one of DC's most powerful and tragic supervillains. This time though, it really seems as though it was not poor Wally's fault. Is it ever his fault? I mean, his punishment of other villains is his fault, but this is so unfortunate. In Future State, Wally ends up becoming possessed by the evil entity known as Famine, becoming one of what appear to be the apocalyptic Four Horsemen.
Finally, in number 1, White Lantern. While Barry Allen became a White Lantern at the end of the Blackest Night storyline, he became in essence a god. I described this in the most powerful Green Arrows list, but hot damn do these dudes have some sweet powers. They can use any color from the spectrum of light, since white light is just a combination of all the others. I'm sure you've seen the album cover, or at the very least the Eevee version of the album cover, and you know, the White Lanterns also have power over life, including the ability to duplicate their rings and resurrect people. Basically anything you think of, they can do it. It's absolutely insane. The White Lanterns are basically God, but with many different avatars. White energy blasts, force field generation, energy constructs, energy twins, ring duplication, mind alteration, wormhole generation, time travel, invisibility, resurrection, just to name a few. Yeah, it's so overpowered that I'm surprised that DC didn't just explode after that. Like, imagine you could play as like a White Lantern in Injustice, but like an actual White Lantern, not like a recolored Green Lantern. Oh, damn.
Number 10, abandon his daughter. Sort of. In the CW Arrowverse, Flash basically put his daughter in a tough spot where she wasn't allowed to return to 2019 and had to stay in the future where she came from, the year 2049. Because she had betrayed Barry and Team Flash, he told her to never return to the year 2019 and warned her that if she did so, he would know, as he would sense her presence in the Speed Force. Wanting to see her father Barry Allen again, Nora decided she had no choice but to find another way to travel back undetected. This caused Nora West Allen to ask Thawne about how to use the negative Speed Force, something Barry couldn't sense. As a result, Nora would later decide to confront the consequences of her actions, dying in the process, instead of continuously being on the run for the rest of her life, because she had used the negative Speed Force so much. Unknowingly, the Flash here helped Nora to turn into a villain by rejecting her. Then there was the whole weird thing of how they ran into like an alternate Nora later on, and she was like, oh yeah, you guys used to tell me stories about this other version of me that you ran into that died, which is like kind of weird. It's kind of a weird story.
And at 9, Kingdom Come. Wally West from Earth 22 is really powerful, but it comes with a major downfall. In the Kingdom Come universe of Earth 22, Wally West received his speed through unknown means, but nonetheless he still became the Flash, obviously. When Superman retired though, Wally kept going, but he kept going and never stopped, running from scene to scene, disaster to disaster, never taking a break. This ended up somehow just making it so that he could never stop running, having to constantly run as fast as he could, resulting in appearing to everyone as just a red blur, classic Flash style. But while this is powerful, he literally cannot stop, so there isn't really much benefit to it. However, he didn't end up killing himself or traveling back in time to kill himself, so you know what, in my books he's more powerful than future Flash, even if he can't stop running. I mean, like, at least the cops or death can't really catch him that way, right? Like, do you think, like, as he gets older, like, he slows down, like, to a point where he shouldn't be able to stand, but he's still running as fast as, like, your typical 23-year-old jogger? but like he can never stop.
Number 8. Mass mind manipulation. Affecting what people know and don't know on a mass scale definitely feels like villain territory, and this is exactly what Wally ended up doing after having one of the worst days of his life. We know it was one of the worst because his now gone Uncle Barry, also known as the Flash, came back just for it, and Barry had said that he would only reappear on the 3 worst days of Wally West's life, so this was definitely one of them. It was after Wally and Linda had lost their unborn children in a fight against Zoom. Believing it would be better for himself and Linda, and maybe even the whole world if no one knew of his secret identity as the Flash, Barry, along with his pal, the Spectre, who had also stopped by for a visit, decided to grant Wally's wish, and everyone was made to forget the truth of the Flash's identity. However, what Wally did not think to ask about, or maybe stipulate, was how this would affect him, as he himself, it turns out, also forgot. Which, not so great. This not only caused a lot more crime to come about, but also made things worse between him and Linda. Note to self, don't mess with the whole world's memories of me. Number 7. Trapping Zoom in his worst memory. And that previous point wasn't even the worst part of that story. Although making the whole world forget that Wally West was the Flash created a lot of problems, even worse, in my opinion, was what he did to Zoom in revenge for hurting Linda. The two had an epic fight while Linda was taken to the hospital, which spanned issues 199 and issue 200 of the series, that started way back in 1987. Volume 2, if you will. But even more shocking was the aftermath of that fight. Wally of course won the fight thanks to a speed boost from both Bart Allen and Jay Garrick, and to make sure Zoom couldn't strike back thereafter again, he trapped him in one of the worst moments of his life, which played on a loop. The time he had unwittingly sealed the fate of his father-in-law, causing his death and later causing him to lose the love of his life, Ashley. I feel like being stuck in the worst moment of your life forever, that's a pretty bad punishment, I'm just saying. I mean, I don't think it ended up actually being forever because comics, but that's pretty bad.
Number 6. Black Lantern Flash. If you want to get technical, or I guess more accurate, Black Lantern Reverse Flash. During the Blackest Night event, Black Hand would become the leader of the Black Lanterns and wielder of the Black Lantern rings. He would use them to raise a core of the undead, so zombies. It would force the DC heroes to face off against their dead enemies and friends. It was a massive crossover event that had years of build-up. And at the end of it, most of the characters who had been dead were resurrected. So not only did they have to contend with a zombified Reverse Flash, at the end of it, he was alive again. Oh joy. Thanks a lot, White Lanterns. Comics are always trying it with zombies since the massive success of Marvel Zombies. How do you feel DC has done? Do you like The Blackest Night, or do you feel like Deceased was a better showing?
Number 5. Flashpoint. Unintentionally, Barry Allen ended up as the villain of his own story and the villain of basically the entire universe when he selfishly used his powers to travel back in time to save his mother. Doing this completely altered the timeline and the future for many heroes and characters in the world. After learning of just how much of an issue this had caused and how he was solely responsible for the reshaping of the world from villain Eobard Thawne no less, what a way to find out, Barry Allen realized that in order to fix everything, he'd have to dip back into the time stream and stop his past self from going back in time to save his mother. Even then, it's implied that Flashpoint was the main cause for the multiverse being permanently altered, and Barry Allen himself became one of the people responsible for the existence of the new continuity and reboot known as Prime Earth and the New 52. Number 4. Became the new Black Flash. The Black Flash is a version of Death in the comics, a very specific version of Death. The Black Flash is said to be the version of Death who comes for speedsters when it is their time to pass on. Often, the Black Flash has been seen as a villain in the comics, even though really when you think about it, Death is kind of just a part of life and is a concept, so it's not really inherently evil when you think about it that way. Still, from the perspective of those who are being chased down, the Black Flash is a villain, which is why it was so crazy when after the Black Flash died, there was a time when Barry Allen had to take over, becoming the new Black Flash temporarily. Number 3. Heroes in Crisis. One of the worst times where we saw the Flash become a villain took place during Heroes in Crisis, which ultimately was a pretty interesting and suspenseful murder mystery story that also dealt with the consequences of being a hero from a mental health standpoint. So overall, this was a cool story, but it was also kind of awful in what it did to Wally. Something that most fans weren't too hot on was the big reveal of this story. A mass murder happened at the Sanctuary, killing many of the heroes who came there to take refuge and seek therapeutic help for trauma suffered both on duty as a hero and outside of that life. Initially, we were led to believe that either Booster Gold or Harley Quinn was possibly responsible, but later on it was revealed that an out-of-control Wally West was actually to blame. We had just gotten Wally back at this point, so many fans were disappointed to see him so quickly and intensely vilified, especially considering even though Wally was really to blame, it wasn't entirely his fault. He lost control of the Speed Force as a result of confronting his own trauma and his paranoia regarding the judgment surrounding said trauma while at Sanctuary. He was assuming that Sanctuary was made by the other heroes purely out of pity for him, because Wally was kind of crazy at the time after having the new reboot come about. Wally decided to break into the files and find out for himself if his suspicions were true. Then he learned that he was in fact wrong and basically became overwhelmed by the countless sessions with other heroes where they discussed their own intense and personal traumas, causing him to lose control. So of course, none of the killings had really been intentional. So it was a really tragic story.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Red Death. Red Death is a speedster that is an evil combination of Batman and the Flash, which already sounds terrifying, but wait till you hear his story. The Bruce Wayne of Earth 52 started off fighting crime with Robin, but Robins kept dying left, right, and center. So understandably, Batman got darker and darker, becoming more extreme with his methods, which honestly just seems more realistic to me. Aside from him just, quitting fighting crime. This eventually leads him to Barry, who he tries to get speed from. But Barry refuses to give Bruce his Speed Force powers. So Batman uses various rogues' weapons to fight him and knocks him out. Once Barry was unconscious, Bruce tied him to the front of a cosmic, treadmill-powered Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force. And then when entering the Speed Force, Barry and Bruce end up fusing together into a Batman with super speed, while Barry's mind was trapped inside Bruce's body. And of course Bruce gets to drive. He also then gets a visit from the Batman Who Laughs, and who they try to recruit him into conquering the multiverse. Anyway, eventually he gets exposed to a large dose of positive energy, which allows Barry Allen to take control. Gotta love those positive vibes. And then he helped in the fight against the Dark Knights, but also the positive energy kills him, and Red Death explodes.
Number 1. Attack on the Teen Titans Academy. One of the atrocities that Wally committed as one of the 4 riders as Famine was that he killed a ton of faculty and students over at the Teen Titans Academy. We see this all go down in a flashback in Future State after the mysterious student Red X seemingly unleashes them on the world. Near the beginning of the first issue for Future State Teen Titans, and in a few panels in that second issue, we get to see just how many people died in this attack on the Academy, and the death toll seems to be pretty substantial. Among the fallen are fellow Titan Donna Troy and youngster Wallace West. That's right, Wally as Famine killed his own family member. It's Flashes killing other baby Flashes, you know what I mean?
Number 10, Reverse Flash. We're talking about Eobard Thawne here. And he's low because he's a different person than Barry Allen. And yet, he is so intrinsically tied to him. Initially, he was an obsessed fan who came back in time to meet his idol. But then once there, he became disillusioned with the Flash, especially when he found the Flash Museum and saw that he was gonna be a villain for the Flash. There was time travel, wibbly wobbly timey-wimey. Eventually, he ended up being trapped in a paradox. Not able to kill the Flash because without him, he would not exist. But that didn't mean that he couldn't mess with him and damage him psychologically and emotionally. He did so many things to ethically mess up his life. As long as those things wouldn't stop him from being the Flash, it was okay. I mean, not for Barry. He killed his mom, killed his fiance, tricked him into killing him being the Reverse Flash. It got real intense. The Reverse Flash has also designed his costume to be the inverse of the Flash's. So yellow and red instead of red and yellow. So in the blur of how fast they move, could you mistake one for the other? Maybe, I don't know, I've never seen anything go that fast. The Reverse Flash's Thawne debuted in The Flash number 139 back in 1963. Number 9, John Fox, aka Future Flash. We're gonna have more than one Future Flash on here. Anyway, this one's from the 27th century. Just speedsters coming down through the ages. We have Reverse Flash from the 25th, Bart Allen aka Impulse from the 30th, and now John from the 27th. John Fox was a historian who went back in time to fetch a Flash to help them defeat a radioactive supervillain in their time. John is scary because there's a lot of manipulation of the time stream frame happening here? I mean, it depends upon how you look at time. Is time something that is just inevitable? It's gonna happen no matter what, or can you change it? Get this, he actually went back in time to Wally's era to act as the Flash because he was worried that there was a disaster that was supposed to happen that Wally might prevent if he was there. However, while he was there, he also fell in love with Wally's girlfriend, Linda Park. Mr. Time Travel and Steal Your Girl. I mean, that scares me. Number 8, Dark Flash. Dark Flash comes from a parallel Earth where up until a certain point his life was just the same as Wally West's. All was going the same up until the battle with Cobra. Now in the main universe, Linda Park was threatened and Wally was able to save her. Piece of cake, I mean not really, but he did it. However, on this alternate Earth, Wally was not able to do that and his Linda died. After this, he becomes a dark and brutal anti-hero, killing villains and carrying out his own brand of justice. That is until, while crossing parallel dimensions as you do, he comes across an alternate version of Wally and Linda, and he tries to take Wally's place. Just people trying to take Wally's life. Linda must be amazing because people are willing to just destroy the space-time continuum to be with her. Time travel, not even once. Number 7, Lady Savage, aka Ivana Molotova. She was created by Russian scientists who were amazed at the powers of the Flash and they wanted to recreate it. So they ended up making a serum that they would test on children. She was one of them. She would also go by the name Christina, potentially to make it easier for readers. It was 1987, but it might also just have been for her covert code operations. Her and her siblings were eventually betrayed by the Manhunters, and she would end up being sold to Vandal Savage. Hence why she would take on the name Lady Savage. Also, for a time it looked like Vandal Savage had killed the Flash, and so he gave her one of his costumes, and at that point she adopted the name Lady Flash. She would eventually have a change of heart and a redemption arc, and the Flash would tell her to keep the costume because she'd earned it. What's scary about this? The child experimentation? The being brought up and brainwashed to do the bidding of others? Fast speedsters put under the control of Vandal Savage? Pretty scary.
Number 6, punishing inertia. After Wally West learned of Bart Allen's death, he considered punishing inertia for it by killing him, but then he ultimately decided on a worse punishment for the villain. A worse punishment than death. Wow. A punishment that sounds like something thought up by a supervillain, truth be told. Granted, Wally was hurting at the time, but at the end of the day, he's still a hero, and this punishment ultimately sounds like something that was cooked up by a great speed-based supervillain. Wally used his powers to slow inertia down to the point that he became virtually a living statue, unable to move but still able to hear and see in real time, experiencing the world around but living in ultra slow motion physically. Each blink of his eyes supposedly would take 100 years. Wally then placed this living statue version of the villain in the Flash Museum, facing an actual statue of Bart Allen, forcing inertia to gaze endlessly at the ghost of a man he could never be. Sounds like a horror story. It sounds awful.
Number 5, the Black Flash. The Black Flash made his first full appearance in the Flash number 141. And when the Black Flash first appeared, he was the Grim Reaper for speedsters. Death, the only being fast enough to catch, well, the fastest man alive and all of the other people who use the Speed Force. It was said that before Flash died, he would see the Black Flash. The question was, had the Black Flash always existed, or had he been brought into being by these people who were tapping into the Speed Force? There's something terrifying about a force faster than the eye can see just waiting to hunt you down. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. Scary poems. Number 4, Future Flash, a different one. So someone the Flash loves dies apparently. That's this carte blanche for him to go off the deep end and go on a killing spree. This is a Barry Allen from a timeline where he feels responsible for Wally West's death. And then a whole bunch of other things in his life goes wrong too, like Iris gets into a car accident, she's put into a wheelchair, and he feels that if he could get faster, go back in time and stop Wally from dying, that would fix everything. But how to get faster? Why, by killing his rogues and amassing energy and all kinds of other villainous things. Of course, this jaded outlook puts him on a collision course with the main verse Flash. And what's scarier than seeing a dark mirror version of yourself, just having to wonder if the same things had happened, would you be that person? Dark, dark thoughts. Number 3, Godspeed. Godspeed first appeared in a vision telling Barry that everyone would die. He would kill them all. And the scariest thing about Godspeed is, spoilers, he was Barry's friend. There are few sadder or more dangerous things than a friend turned supervillain. August Hart would first start off helping Barry, and he would even try to be his partner after he gained his super speed powers, and Barry would confide in him and tell him who he was. August wanted to use his powers to solve his brother's murder. However, he became warped and decided to, you guessed it, just dole out his own brand of justice. He was seeking vengeance for his brother's murder. Sad times, having to confront your friend and ultimately lock him up to iron heights. People who know your identity are scary, but I mean, no one goes as hard as the Reverse Flashes. No one. They still take the cake. Never forget, Hunter Zolomon made Linda Park miscarry Wally West's kids. That's a thing that happened. Number 2, Red Death. That's right, it's a Dark Knight's Metal reference that is not number 1. Dark Knight's Metal showcased the Dark Multiverse, a series of negative Earths where things were dark and had gone wrong. Ignore those other positive Earths where that had happened too. Now we have negative Earths. Because never forget, negative numbers are bad and should feel bad. I'll never forget one vid I made a joke based on that meme that was popular at the time, like me, an intellectual, and I made it in reference to a ship because that's what we were talking about, and someone didn't get the joke and got super triggered and thought that I genuinely thought I was an intellectual because of that ship, and they spent months on every video commenting that I was a terrible narcissistic person. It was just like, wow, I wonder what it's like to miss a joke that badly. That must be what the Joker feels like. So, in a universe where Robins just keep on dying, Batman goes off the deep end. He starts killing, stealing weapons, anything to augment himself and add to his arsenal. But the Flash refuses to give him his super speed, because I mean, why would you? So Batman manages to knock him out, time to the front of the Batmobile, and drive with him tied at the front on the cosmic treadmill. This ends up fusing them into a creature called Red Death, a crazed Batman with access to the Speed Force. Pretty scary. And in at number 1, Johnny Quick. Number 1 has to go to a member of the crime syndicate, the original, alternate, evil Flash. They come from Earth 3 or Earth 2, but nowadays most likely Earth 3. This is a world where the heroes are the villains and the villains are the heroes. There have been a couple of origins for Johnny Quick. Like for example, in one, he's a drug addict who ends up stealing the power of his speedster by taking his blood and synthesizing it, but then he becomes addicted to it. However, the version that most people are most likely familiar with is the one who was always a thief and while robbing Star Labs ended up getting into the same type of accident that created the Mainverse Flash, so covered in chemicals, struck by lightning. After this, he decided to just continue on with his crime spree along with his girlfriend who had also gained powers in the incident, who called herself Atomica. So he would join the crime syndicate and just wreak havoc on the world. Johnny Quick is just bad. No dead sidekicks, no pathos. He's a criminal and he likes it. And that's definitely worthy of a number 1 spot.